10 true, most disturbing Northern Ice Road horror stories. These accounts come from drivers, riggers, bridge crews, and dispatch notes gathered during thaw on the long haul between high country depots and river crossings. Hear a stress sensor sing before the gauge admits a change. A dash mic pick up a cab voice from the next mile. And a wind shift flatten snow into a road that does not exist. Human threat rides as a false pilot truck that waves a convoy toward a closed span. Natural hazard lives in lift water under ice, whiteout curtains, and pressure ridges that move like breath. If you work the north at night, this one is for you. These are real logs and real roads, so listen close. Drop your own story below, we read them all. All right, let us get into it. For 15 years, I've been a bridge technician, certified level 2 NDT, working the steel and concrete arteries that span the major rivers of the Midwest. My kit is a second skin, portable spectrum analyzer, ultrasonic flaw detector, acoustic emission sensors, and the standard toolkit. We're the diagnosticians of the behemoths, listening to their stresses, feeling their fatigue, ensuring they carry the loads we ask of them day in and day out. Most mornings, the work is predictable, a rhythm of setup, scan, log, and move on. The gauges are our eyes, the readouts our pulse. They speak a language of microstrain and displacement, a language we're trained to understand long before any human ear or hand could detect a problem. This particular morning, we were on the old Garrison Truss, a cantilevered structure built in the late 1930s, spanning a wide, slow-moving stretch of the river. It was a scheduled quarterly inspection, focusing on the main stress bays in the central span. My partner was setting up the laser extensometers on the east side, while I ran the acoustic pickups along the primary tension members. The air was still, cold, just before dawn. The first light was a bruised purple bruise on the eastern horizon, promising a clear day. A faint, acrid scent of river silt and diesel exhaust hung in the air, a familiar perfume of these crossings. Our operational protocol is absolute. Instrumentation provides the first warning. A digital readout, a needle twitch on an analog dial. These are the precursors. Audible or tactile feedback from the structure itself is always a secondary confirmation, never the primary alert. The physics are clear. Stress accumulates, material deforms at a microscopic level, and our sensors detect that change long before it translates into a vibration a human can feel, or a sound a human can hear. This hierarchy of data is fundamental to bridge safety. It's what allows us to intervene, to close a lane, to schedule repairs before a problem becomes catastrophic. I was connecting the last of the AE, acoustic emission, pickups to the data logger, just above the main lower chord in the central stress bay. The air was so quiet I could hear the faint click of the connection seating. Then, a sound. High-pitched, almost imperceptible at first, like a distant, sustained violin note, but metallic. It wasn't a hum, not yet. It was more like a pure tone, rising slightly in pitch. I paused, my hand still on the sensor cable. Perhaps it was the pre-dawn chill, or the residual hum of the coffee in my thermos, but for a split second I dismissed it as a phantom tone, interference from the nearby radio mast. My mistake. I checked the AE monitor. The digital readout for that specific pickup, channel 7, was stable. 0 counts per second. The analog meter showed no deflection. Yet the sound persisted, a distinct high-frequency singing emanating directly from the steel member where the pickup was attached. It was a harmonic pre-echo, a phenomenon I'd only read about in theoretical papers, never encountered in the field. The bridge was singing, but the instruments were deaf to its early warning. "You hear that?" I radioed my partner. My voice was low, almost a whisper despite the open air. "Hear what?" came the reply, a little crackle on the line. "Just the river and the wind picking up." "No wind," I said, my eyes fixed on channel 7. Something else. A tone. I disconnected the pickup, then reconnected it, checking the cable for kinks, the magnet for full contact. The tone was still there, unwavering. I put my ear close to the steel, feeling the cold, rough texture of the paint. The singing was undeniable, a resonant frequency vibrating through the vast steel lattice. It was coming from the bridge. Then the span gave up. This was a deep, resonant rumble that seemed to rise from the very foundations of the structure, vibrating up through the deck. It wasn't loud, not like a truck rumbling past, but it was pervasive, a deep-seated thrum that filled the air. My partner, now closer, confirmed it. "Okay, I hear it now. What is that?" I looked at the primary stress gauges on my data logger, the strain gauges, the displacement transducers. They showed minimal change, fractions of a microstrain, well within expected diurnal fluctuations. Nothing to correlate with the profound hum now resonating through the structure. Our training, our entire operational safety doctrine, is built on the premise that quantitative data precedes qualitative observation. The digital readout is primary, the analog gauge is secondary. Human perception, sound, vibration, feel, is tertiary, a confirmation, never the first alert. This morning, that hierarchy inverted itself. I walked toward the center of the deck, my heavy work boots clanking on the steel grating. As I moved, the deck felt soft under studs, not yielding, not unstable, but subtly, unnervingly pliant. It was like walking on a dense, stiff mattress, a sensation completely alien to the solid, unyielding feel of a steel bridge deck. The humming intensified slightly, a deep, resonant chord, felt more in the soles of my feet and the pit of my stomach than heard directly. "Escort Unit 1, I called on the radio. "Can you confirm surrounding air quality? Any unusual atmospheric conditions?" "Clear air, Unit 2, the escort radioed back promptly. "No fog, no unusual winds. Traffic's light. Why do you ask?" "Nothing," I said, my gaze sweeping the empty river below, the distant, silent highway. "Just checking." I remembered a summer afternoon, years ago, sitting on the bank below this very bridge with my parent, fishing. The bridge then was a silent, stoic guardian, its steel framework humming faintly with the distant traffic. A lullaby to the river. It never felt like this. Never sang like this. The harmonic pre-echo from the pickup was still there, a thin, persistent whine layered over the deeper hum of the span. I checked the ultrasonic flaw detector. No cracks, no delamination, nothing. The AE monitor, which should have been screaming with microfractures if the bridge was truly under that kind of stress, remained stubbornly quiet for all channels except the one that had first sung. Channel 7 now was showing a very low, intermittent burst of activity, still disproportionate to the sensory input. "We need to halt traffic," I told my partner, my voice firm, cutting through the low hum. "I'm calling it in." "Based on what readings?" he asked, his brow furrowed, looking at his own stable instruments. "Based on the bridge telling me," I replied, a cold certainty settling in my chest. "It's singing, and the deck feels wrong. The gauges aren't catching it yet, but it's there." Abandoning our standard data collection protocol, I radioed dispatch, requesting an immediate full closure of the old garrison truss. The supervisor on duty questioned the lack of quantifiable data, the stable readings, that my insistence was absolute. The bridge was closed, traffic diverted, a major artery temporarily severed based on a sound and a feeling. Later that week, after extensive, costly inspections involving specialized equipment and engineering teams, no structural fault was found. The steel was sound. The concrete was solid. All instruments, including ours, were recalibrated and found to be functioning perfectly. The event was logged as an unexplained harmonic resonance, a transient anomaly. The bridge reopened. But every time I drive across the old garrison truss now, I listen. I feel. Because I know it can sing a warning, a pre-echo of stress, long before our instruments are ready to hear it. And that silence, when the gauges are calm, but the bridge has spoken, is the most unsettling sound of all. I've been a lead driver for heavy haul operations for 22 years, mostly running the high country. My certifications cover everything from hazardous materials to wide load escorts and extreme winter operations. My rig is a custom Peterbilt 389, pulling a 13-axle lowboy, a setup that's seen more mountain passes than most people see paved roads. This territory, the Northern Rockies, is where weather and terrain dictate everything. Tonight, I was at the head of a 3-truck convoy, moving a critical section of a wind turbine blade, a 50-yard piece of composite, through a late-season snowstorm. Our route plan was meticulously detailed, a 400-mile run with multiple planned stops and a critical pass crossing. The mountain pass was notorious for sudden closures, especially in March. We had 2 pilot vehicles, one front and one rear, both equipped with standard amber beacons, oversized load banners, and the required red-orange flags. Our lead pilot, Unit 1, was a seasoned driver, and we'd worked together before. Communication was open on CB Channel 19. The protocol for a closed gate was absolute: halt, contact dispatch, await clearance, or reroute. There was no improvisation, no exceptions. That's how you stay alive and keep a multi-million-dollar load intact. We were making good time, just past the last turnout before the pass approach, when the snow started coming down heavier, reducing visibility to maybe 75 yards. My wipers were on full, the engine humming a steady rhythm. Up ahead, I could just make out the silhouette of the closure gate, a heavy steel barrier with a prominent road closed sign illuminated by its own solar-powered LED. I keyed the mic. Unit 1, this is lead driver. Confirm visual on gate. Prepare to hold position. No immediate response. Static. Then, through the swirling flakes, I saw it. The pilot truck, not our Unit 1, pulled up to the gate. It was a Ford F-350, not the Dodge Ram our assigned pilot drove. And the flag it was waving, it was a bright, almost neon magenta. Not the standard orange, yellow, or red we used for signaling. Not any color I'd ever seen used for road operations in this region, or anywhere else for that matter. But it was waving us through, a clear, insistent sweep towards the closed span. My first thought was a momentary lapse, a fatigue-induced assumption. Maybe it's a new winter flag color, a temporary local protocol I missed in the last briefing. I'd been on the road for 14 hours straight, pushing hard to make up for an earlier delay. That was my mistake, a professional misjudgment born of weariness. I should have challenged it immediately. I keyed the mic again. Unit 1, confirm visual on gate. Confirm proceed. What's with the magenta flag? Still static. The strange pilot truck continued its insistent waving. Its roof-mounted beacon wasn't flashing, which was another anomaly. Every pilot truck I knew ran their beacon in low visibility, especially near a closure. I started to slow, my foot easing off the accelerator, but the momentum of the heavy load and the convoy behind me still pushed forward. Convoy, hold position. Do not proceed. Repeat, hold, I barked into the mic, cutting off any further thought of a new protocol. This wasn't right. The closure gate was starkly visible now, the road closed sign glaring. The snow around it was fresh, undisturbed. I pulled my rig onto the approach berm, engaging every hazard light on the truck and trailer. My partner, who'd been dozing lightly, snapped awake. What's going on? He asked, rubbing his eyes. Unidentified pilot waving us through a closed gate, I replied, my voice tighter than I liked. The strange pilot truck, still waving that bizarre magenta flag, drove right past the gate, disappearing into the snow-filled darkness beyond. It didn't pause, didn't check for traffic, just went. I grabbed the satellite phone, bypassing the CB. Dispatch, this is lead driver. Urgent. Request immediate status on Mountain Pass Gate. We have an unauthorized pilot attempting to direct us through a closed span. Repeating, unauthorized pilot, magenta flag, no beacon. Our assigned pilot is unresponsive. The voice from dispatch was calm but firm. Lead driver, Mountain Pass is closed indefinitely, effective 2 hours ago due to heavy snowfall and avalanche risk. No escorts are authorized. Your assigned pilot, Unit 1, reported an engine fault 10 miles back and is currently awaiting roadside assistance. Unit 1 is not at the pass. My stomach clenched. Our assigned pilot, Unit 1, was supposed to be ahead of us, clearing the path, not 10 miles behind. This meant we had been vulnerable, exposed for a significant stretch of road. The protocol had failed. Understood, dispatch. We are holding position on the approach berm. I need a ranger unit to the gate immediately. I cut the call, grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, and started out of the cab. Stay here. Keep eyes on the rear. Don't move the rig, I told my partner, my hand on the cold steel of the door handle. The snow was already knee-deep in places, a soft, silent blanket. I remembered a summer day, years ago, teaching my kid how to skip stones on a lake. The sun warm on my face, the simple joy of it. That memory felt like a lifetime away, a different reality. I crunched through the fresh snow toward the closure gate. The wind picked up, whipping flakes into my face. The only sound was the hiss of the snow and the distant rumble of my idling engine. My powerful beam cut through the gloom. The closure gate was exactly as I'd seen it, chain secured, padlock gleaming under the light. I scanned the ground. Fresh tire tracks. They led directly to the gate, deep grooves in the pristine snow. But they stopped abruptly at the gate. I walked closer, tracing the end of the tracks with my boot. No vehicle had passed through this gate. The snow beyond was untouched, a smooth, unbroken expanse. Yet, I had just seen a pilot truck, clear as day, drive past this gate. I swung my flashlight beam into the darkness beyond, trying to pierce the veil of falling snow. 50 yards down the road, the indistinct shape of a truck was still there, a darker mass against the white. The magenta flag was still visible, fluttering, a stark, unnatural color in the monochrome landscape. But its beacon remained dark. There was no engine sound, no hum, no exhaust plume. Just the wind and the relentless fall of snow. My breath plumed in the frigid air. The smell of pine needles, carried on the wind, was surprisingly strong. I called dispatch again, my voice tight. Dispatch, this is lead driver. I'm at the gate. The tracks. They stop. No vehicle has passed this gate. But there's a truck, 50 yards past it, still visible. And it's not moving. No beacon. No sound. An hour later, a ranger unit arrived, its blue and red lights painting the snow in strobing patterns. The ranger, a woman named Miller, was efficient. We walked to the gate together. The gate was still closed, still locked. The snow beyond was still undisturbed. No tire tracks, no pilot truck. Gate log shows no passage since yesterday afternoon, Ranger Miller stated, her voice flat, shining her own light over the untouched snow. And this fresh snow confirms no vehicle has passed since the last fall. We searched the turnout and approach berm more thoroughly. Nothing. No discarded magenta flag. No sign of a driver. No footprints other than ours. The only evidence was my testimony, the convoy's testimony, and the lingering, impossible image burned into my mind. A pilot truck, waving a flag no one used, driving through a gate that remained closed, leaving no tracks and vanishing.
I've been running the northern ice roads for 17 seasons now. Most of that time has been spent on the main river route, hauling supplies to the remote camps and bringing out equipment. My rig, a Kenworth W900, is set up specifically for these conditions. Triple diff lock, studded tires, extra fuel capacity, and a heated cargo box. I know the feel of a solid ice road like I know the feel of my own heartbeat. You learn to read the subtle vibrations through the floorboards, the hum of the tires on the frozen surface, the way the light refracts through the ice fog. It becomes a second skin, a predictable, albeit dangerous, environment.
The protocol is drilled into you. Maintain speed, keep distance from other rigs, check your gauges, and report anything out of the ordinary to dispatch immediately. The ice road is a marvel of engineering and constant maintenance, built on a frozen river that, for a few months each year, becomes a highway. We rely on the understanding that the ice, once thick enough, is a stable, solid medium. If it isn't, you don't drive on it. That's the ironclad rule. This particular run was standard. Early March, still cold enough to keep the ice solid, but the days were getting longer. I was about 300 miles north of the main staging area, heading towards the mile marker flats, a long straight stretch where the river widens out and the ice road usually feels like asphalt. My manifest was a load of drilling pipe, heavy and stacked low, keeping the center of gravity where it needed to be. The air was still, maybe 10 below 0 Fahrenheit, and the sky was a clear, pale blue, hinting at the sun that would eventually break through the horizon. Inside the cab, the scent of a pine air freshener fought a losing battle against the diesel fumes and stale coffee. I remember hitting the mid-river lane, a section known for consistent ice thickness. My onboard monitoring system, which tracks ice depth using sonar pulses, was green across the board, showing a solid 60 inches. I was holding a steady 20 miles per hour, the recommended speed for my weight class, keeping a mile separation from the rig ahead. That's when I felt it. A very subtle shimmy, not a vibration from the road, but a lateral shift. The entire rig, all 130,000 pounds of it, seemed to move a foot to the left, then back. I instinctively checked the steering, but the wheel was straight. No wind. The air was dead calm. I figured it was just the usual fatigue tremor, or maybe a slight crosswind I wasn't registering. A minor oversight, a momentary dismissal of an anomaly. Then it happened again, more pronounced. This time, the movement was undeniable. The rig walked sideways, not skidding, but as if the ground underneath had shifted. My coffee cup, sitting in its holder, sloshed over the rim. I immediately dropped my speed to 10, then 5 miles per hour, my foot hovering over the brake. I grabbed the mic. Dispatch, this is Unit 17, experiencing lateral movement on the mid-river lane, approximately mile marker 287. No wind. Gauges are clear. Requesting status check on ice integrity ahead. The voice of the dispatcher crackled back, calm and professional. Unit 17, copy. No reports of issues. Our sensors show stable conditions. Can you confirm your location and observations? I confirmed. As I spoke, the surface of the ice ahead of me began to change. It wasn't a crack, not a fissure, but a slow, deliberate rise. The entire expanse of the river, from bank to bank, began to lift, like a gigantic frozen lung drawing breath. The movement was so gradual at first, it was almost imperceptible. But then it gained momentum. The ice pulsed, a slow, rhythmic heave that distorted the flat, white plain into rolling hills and valleys. This wasn't...
My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd seen pressure ridges form, heard the groaning and popping as the ice fractured and stacked. This was different.
There was no sound of cracking, only a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the cab, a sound that felt more like a living thing than shifting ice. The protocol for encountering a pressure ridge is clear. Assess, if passable, proceed slowly. If not, report and await assistance. But this wasn't a ridge. It was the entire road breathing. The rule about maintaining a steady pace to distribute weight evenly became impossible. I was forced to stop completely. I watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the ice ahead of me rose into a dome, perhaps 15 feet high at its apex, then slowly, agonizingly, subsided. As it lowered, another section to my left began its ascent. The phenomenon was spreading. The river, which had always been a solid, predictable foundation, was now a fluid, dynamic entity. The rig, my heavy, stable rig, felt like a toy boat on a turbulent sea. I called dispatch again, my voice tight. "Dispatch, this is Unit 17. The ice is heaving. I repeat, the entire surface is moving. It's like the river is breathing underneath. I am stopped at mile marker 287. I cannot proceed." There was a pause, longer this time. "Unit 17, copy. We are showing no anomalous readings. Are you certain of your observations? Is there a ground tremor?" "There's no ground tremor," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "The ice itself is moving, lifting and falling. It's a heave, a massive under-ice heave." The surface pulsed like slow lungs. I could hear the dispatcher relaying my message to a supervisor. A new voice came on the line, calm but with an edge of concern. "Unit 17, this is Supervisor. Can you confirm visual on any water ingress or structural failure of the ice?" "No open water, Supervisor. No visible cracks, just movement. Massive, slow, upward and downward movement. The road is buckling and unbuckling." "I'm seeing waves of ice, Supervisor." I remembered a summer evening, parked by a small lake, watching dragonflies, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The contrast with the current, impossible reality was jarring, almost comical. The next wave hit my section of the mid-river lane. The front of the rig lifted, slowly, inexorably, tilting the cab backward. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The heavy drilling pipe in the trailer groaned, the chains straining. I could feel the entire structure of the ice road flexing beneath me. The sound was not of braking, but of enormous mass shifting, a deep, guttural moan that echoed through the vast, empty landscape. It was the sound of something impossibly large moving beneath the surface, something that shouldn't be able to move at all. The upward surge continued for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, the ice began to descend. The rig settled back down, but not perfectly. The road was no longer flat. It was riddled with subtle undulations, like a frozen ocean swell. The mile marker flats, which I could now see in the distance, were also affected, their uniform white surface now a series of gentle, unsettling hills. "Unit 17, what is your status?" The supervisor's voice cut through the silence. "I'm stable for now, Supervisor, but the road is compromised. The entire lane is unstable. This isn't a localized event. It's widespread. I can see it for miles." My voice was shaking. "Understood, Unit 17. Hold your position. We are attempting to verify with aerial surveillance, but conditions are hazy at your location. We advise against further movement until we can assess." I sat there, engine idling, watching the impossible river. The sun finally broke through the haze, casting long, stark shadows across the heaving ice. The surface continued its slow, terrifying rhythm, a silent, monstrous breath. My trust in the ice, in the predictable, solid ground I'd driven for years, was shattered.
The river wasn't just frozen, it was alive. And whatever moved beneath it, whatever caused that impossible heave, remained unseen, unheard, and utterly inexplicable. The road ahead, the mile marker flats, was no longer a path to follow, but a mystery, a vast white expanse that pulsed with an unseen life. I had no protocol for this, no rule applied.
15 years I've been a night dispatcher, watching the green lines crawl across the screens, listening to the static and the voices that cut through it. This console, this room, it's my universe from midnight to dawn. We cover a vast, mostly rural sector, hundreds of square miles where cell service dies faster than a battery in a blizzard. Our comm system isn't just a convenience, it's the lifeline. We've got a network of repeaters, some perched on high points like Relay Hill, others tucked away at road edges to catch signals from deep canyon bottoms or dense old growth. My job is to know every crackle, every squelch, every voice, and where it's coming from. The air in the dispatch bay is always cool, kept that way for the server racks humming in the adjacent room. Sometimes, late in a quiet shift, I can smell the faint, clean scent of ozone from the equipment, a smell that usually means everything is working exactly as it should. Tonight was shaping up to be one of those quiet ones. The weather was clear, no incidents logged, just routine checks and status updates. I was scrolling through the last hour's traffic log, noting the time Unit 2 checked in from the North Patrol, when my eyes drifted to the clock. 2:29. Time for Unit 4's next status check. Our radio protocol is absolute. You key the mic, you wait for the confirming click or tone, then you speak. Your voice transmits. When you release, there's a squelch tail, a brief hiss as the channel closes. This sequence is fundamental. It's how we know who's transmitting, when, and that the system is functioning. If you hear a voice without a key press, it's an open mic, a stuck mic, or a serious system fault. In 15 years, I'd seen a few stuck mics, usually from a unit's console ticking a hit on a bumpy road, but never a phantom voice. My finger hovered over the transmit button for the Relay Hill channel, the one Unit 4 uses in its patrol area.
I was just about to press it, my thumb resting on the cold plastic when I heard it. Dispatch, Unit 4. The voice was faint, slightly distorted, but it was unmistakably Unit 4's regular driver. My finger froze. I hadn't pressed the key. The console's transmit indicator was dark. No outbound signal from my end. I pulled my hand back, staring at the screen. The incoming signal indicator for Unit 4's ID was also dark. No squelch tail. Nothing. It was as if the sound had just appeared in the air around me. I leaned forward, checking the console's active channels. All normal. No open mics. No system alerts. My last transmission, according to the log, was at 02:15. A quick weather query for Unit 1. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. Perhaps I'd subconsciously anticipated the call. A brief auditory hallucination. It was 02:30.
I'd been on shift since 1800. I briefly thought of the simple pleasure of making myself a cup of strong black coffee and watching the sun rise after my shift, a small, comforting ritual. I keyed the mic, this time deliberately. Unit 4, dispatch, say again. Silence. No reply. I waited, listening intently to the channel. Nothing but the usual background hum. 1 minute passed. The digital clock on my console flipped to 0231. I was preparing to try again, my finger once more hovering over the transmit key, when it happened again. Dispatch, Unit 4. This time I was fully alert. My hand was still in the air. I had not pressed the key. The console remained dark. The voice was the same, faint and distorted, but there was something else now, something I hadn't quite registered the first time.
Unit 4, dispatch, confirm your location. Are you experiencing comms issues? Again, silence. I tried the direct channel, bypassing the relay hill repeater, just in case it was a localized repeater fault. Nothing. My mind raced through possible system faults. An echo, maybe? A forward path echo is a rare phenomenon where a transmitted signal reflects back from an impedance mismatch somewhere in the network. But that would require my transmission to generate it, and it would sound like my own voice, distorted, not Unit 4's. This was different. This was a voice appearing on an inactive channel without a key press, twice, a minute apart. I pulled up the system diagnostics for the relay hill repeater. All green, no errors. The specific road edge repeater that covers Unit 4's usual patrol sector also showed normal operational parameters. I felt a cold dread begin to settle in my stomach. The equipment was telling me everything was fine, but my ears were telling me something impossible. I picked up the landline and called the supervisor. Supervisor, this is dispatch. I'm experiencing a comms anomaly with Unit 4. I explained the situation, the voice before the key, the repeat, the hitch in breath. The supervisor, a seasoned veteran, listened patiently. He suggested I try Unit 3, who was in an adjacent sector, to see if they could raise Unit 4. Sometimes a relay can be finicky, he offered, though his tone suggested he knew this was beyond a simple, finicky relay. I tried Unit 3. Unit 3 dispatch, attempt to raise Unit 4 on primary. Confirm if you have contact. A moment later, Unit 3 replied. Negative dispatch. Attempted Unit 4 on primary and secondary. No contact. I checked Unit 4's last logged position again. He was supposed to be near the old logging road, mile marker 17, heading towards the northern boundary. That area was notorious for its spotty coverage, a place where the signal often dropped out, but never, in my experience, generated phantom transmissions. The hitch in breath, that small, human detail, kept replaying in my head. It was too specific for a random system artifact. 5 minutes crawled by. The bay felt colder. I was staring at the console, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The silence was heavier now, punctuated only by the low hum of the servers. Then, the console did light up, a weak, flickering incoming signal indicator from Unit 4's ID. Very weak, barely registering, and this time, I heard it. A faint, distinct key press. Then, Unit 4's driver, his voice strained, almost a whisper, breaking through the static. Dispatch. I heard you call. From the next mile. Just now. I'm stuck. My engine's dead. I'm at the old logging road, mile marker 17. The radio, it's acting up. Kept hearing my own voice. My heart hammered against my ribs. He heard me call, but I never keyed up when I heard him. And he heard his own voice. Unit 4, say again about your voice. I pressed, my own voice tight. He struggled through the static. I heard a call, then my own voice, like an echo, but it wasn't me saying it. It was ahead of me on the road, like it was coming from the next mile. The signal dropped. The console went dark. I immediately dispatched Unit 3 to Unit 4's last known and reported location. They found him an hour later, exactly where he said he was. His truck indeed dead. The driver was shaken, insisting he'd heard my voice, then his own, coming from ahead of him on the road, echoing back to him. My logs showed no outbound transmission from me when I heard him the first 2 times. My logs showed no inbound.
I've been a convoy pilot for over 15 years, mostly running the northern plains in winter. It's a specialized job, guiding oversized loads, often through conditions that would shut down regular traffic. My rig is a purpose-built pilot truck, heavy-duty suspension, extra lighting, a full comms suite, and a certified GPS system linked to DOT waypoints. We're the eyes and ears for the big iron behind us, the first ones to hit the ice, and the last to clear a stretch. You learn to trust your instruments, your training, and the markers, especially the markers. This particular run was moving a modular housing unit, a wide load, from the fabrication plant out to a remote site. We'd been tracking a cold front for days, and it finally caught us just as we cleared the last town. Dispatch had given us the green light to proceed, advising extreme caution. Whiteout conditions expected. Visibility 0 to 50 feet. The voice crackled over the radio. I acknowledged, checked my mirrors, and watched the lead unit of the main transport, a massive prime mover, fall into position behind me. Then the second, then the third. We were a snake on the prairie, a string of lights against the encroaching gray. My routine is ingrained. Check the GPS, cross-reference with the route manifest, scan the road ahead for marker posts. These posts are critical out here. Tall fiberglass poles with reflective bands, planted every quarter mile or so along the shoulder. They're your lifeline when the sky and ground merge into a single, blinding sheet. My rig has a high-mounted light bar, cutting through the snow, and internal heaters keep the windshield clear. But even with all that, a whiteout is a wall. It steals your depth perception, warps sound, and plays tricks on your eyes. You learn to rely on the faint glow of the marker posts, like distant stars guiding a ship. The wind picked up, howling around the cab, a high-pitched whine that vibrated through the floorboards.
Snow began to fall not just from above, but horizontally, driven by a gale that felt like it was trying to peel the paint off the truck. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. I slowed to a crawl, maybe 10 miles an hour. My hazard lights flashing, the strobes on my roof cutting through the maelstrom.
The GPS unit on my dash glowed steadily. A bright blue line indicating our route. A small yellow triangle representing my truck, precisely on that line. Then I saw it. Ahead, maybe 30 feet out. A clear lane, not just a faint track, but a distinct, packed down path. Almost as if a plow had just passed. It was too neat, too defined for a natural drift. Yet the snow was still falling, still blowing. My first thought was relief. Maybe a maintenance crew had been through. I glanced at the GPS. The blue line showed the road making a slight, almost imperceptible curve to the left, following the contour of the open flats. But this new lane, this packed white ribbon, seemed to pull gently to the right. I'd been driving for 8 hours straight, the constant tension of the whiteout gnawing at my focus. A small mistake, a moment of overconfidence. I figured it was a temporary bypass, unmapped, perhaps for a recent washout, or a new access point to the snow fence line that ran parallel to the road a few hundred yards off. I eased the wheel, letting the truck follow the path that looked right. The packed snow offered better traction than the loose powder on the GPS-indicated route. And for a moment, I appreciated the smooth ride. The smell of hot diesel from the engine, usually a constant, was now subtly mixed with the sharp, clean scent of fresh, cold snow. Convoy lead. Keep your eyes peeled for the main road markers. Understood. Lead. My GPS started beeping, a soft, insistent tone. Off route. Off route. I ignored it for a moment, convinced the mapping was simply out of date. The lane felt too real, too intentional. But then I noticed something else. The marker posts. They should have been on my right, evenly spaced. I hadn't seen one for a while. I peered through the swirling snow, straining to catch a glimpse of a reflective band. Nothing. The snow fence, a long line of weathered wood and wire, was now much closer to my right, almost at the edge of the lane. It should have been further out. The beeping grew more urgent. Off route. Recalculating. I tried to pull the GPS display into a wider view, but the signal seemed to be struggling, the map freezing for split seconds before updating with jerky movements. That's when I saw it. A faint, reddish glow in the distance, ahead of me, within the false lane. My breath hitched. My convoy was behind me. I was the lead. There was nothing, no one ahead of me on this stretch of road. I flicked my brights on, then off. The red glow remained, steady, unwavering, like a pair of tail lights. It was too far to resolve clearly, just to diffuse pulsing warmth in the white. Convoy lead to Unit 2, do you see any lights ahead of me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A pause, longer than it should have been. Negative lead, just your strobes, what's your 20?
I'm on a packed lane veering slightly right of the main route. I have a light ahead. Say again, lead? Your signal's breaking up. We're losing visual on your strobes. My heart hammered against my ribs. The static on the radio intensified, making Unit 2's voice almost unintelligible. The red glow ahead didn't move. It just sat there, like a beacon. The lane I was on, the road that had drawn itself out of the white, felt like it was pulling. I remembered building snow forts as a kid, shaping the drifts into tunnels and walls. How solid they felt, how real. This felt just as solid, but terrifyingly wrong. I slammed on the brakes, the ABS grinding as the rig slid a few feet on the packed snow. The red glow ahead vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. The lane itself, so clear moments before, seemed to blur at its edges, dissolving back into the featureless white. I was stopped dead. The only sound the wind and the idling engine. My GPS was now a frantic symphony of alarms, displaying my truck icon deep in an unmarked, empty area, far from the blue line of the highway. The snow fence was barely visible to my right, no longer a parallel line but curving away into the storm. I tried the radio again. Nothing but static. My convoy was somewhere behind me, probably still on the actual road, wondering where I'd gone. I had to get back. Slowly, carefully, I engaged reverse, the tires churning. The clear lane was gone, replaced by a deep, soft drift. I backed up, inch by agonizing inch, until the GPS finally showed me near the blue line again. It took another hour of crawling, using only the GPS and the faint, ghostly outlines of the real marker posts to find my way back to the main route. When I finally re-established radio contact, Unit 2 was relieved. "Lead, we lost you for a good 20 minutes. Where'd you go?" "Just a detour," I mumbled, not wanting to explain what I'd seen. Lost my bearings in the whiteout. Back on track now. We completed the run, but the image of that perfectly formed lane leading off into nowhere and the phantom red glow stayed with me. I've driven through countless whiteouts since, but I've never trusted my eyes over the GPS again. Sometimes, when the snow is really coming down, I still catch myself scanning for that impossibly clear path, and I wonder what or who was waiting at the end of it. For over 2 decades, my life has been lived behind the wheel of a tractor-trailer, hauling freight across the northern plains. I'm an owner-operator, meaning my rig is my livelihood, my office, and often my home away from home. I run a 17 Freightliner Cascadia, well-maintained, with a custom dashcam setup that records both forward and cabin views, along with an integrated dash mic. It's standard practice for insurance, for incident logs, and sometimes just for documenting the long stretches of road. My routes typically take me through Montana, the Dakotas, and into Minnesota, often through bitter cold and long, dark nights. The night this started, I was pushing through a stretch of I-94 in eastern North Dakota, roughly 40 miles west of Fargo. The temperature gauge read -21 degrees Fahrenheit,
with a wind chill that probably dropped it another 15. Snow had fallen earlier, leaving the landscape a vast, unbroken white under a sky heavy with low cloud cover. My standard procedure, especially in these conditions, is a thorough pre-trip inspection, followed by a quick cab check after any stop. I'd fueled up about an hour prior, a brief, solitary stop at an automated pump. I remember the air biting at my exposed skin as I checked the tires and fifth wheel. Back in the cab, I'd started the engine, let the air pressure build, and got the heater blasting. I usually do a quick sweep of the interior, but that night, the cold had me rushing back inside. I just wanted to get warm and back on the road. A small mistake. A momentary lapse in my usual diligence, driven by the biting cold. The cab was a haven of warmth against the brutal exterior. The engine hummed a steady rhythm. The road noise, a low thrum beneath it. I had the heater fan on full, pushing hot air through the vents, chasing the last vestiges of chill from the interior. I was about 30 minutes past my fuel stop, settled into the long haul, when I heard it.
A short, distinct yes. It came from the passenger side of the cab, clear as day, through the internal speakers connected to my dash mic. My first thought was that I'd somehow missed a radio transmission, or maybe the mic had picked up something from a passing vehicle. But the sound was too localized, too intimate. It sounded like it was right there. I glanced over. The passenger seat was empty, as it always was. The seat fabric, a dark gray cloth, was lightly dusted with a fine layer of hoarfrost, particularly noticeable on the headrest and the upper backrest. It was a detail I hadn't registered when I'd first climbed in, but now it stood out, a crystalline shimmer in the dim cab light. And as I watched, the seat seemed to settle. A slight, almost imperceptible sag in the cushion, as if someone had just shifted their weight onto it. At the same moment, the heater fan, which had been roaring on its highest setting, audibly slowed, then steadied itself on a lower, quieter speed, as if someone had reached over and adjusted the dial. I hadn't touched it. I pulled the rig onto the next available shoulder, the air brakes hissing, the truck shuddering to a halt. My heart was pounding, a sudden cold dread replacing the warmth of the cab. I killed the engine, plunging the cab into an unnerving silence, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. I grabbed the dashcam tablet, rewinding the footage. The forward camera showed nothing but the dark highway. The cabin view, however, was clearer. I watched myself drive, then saw the exact moment. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. The passenger seat, empty, frosted. Then the audio spike, the distinct yes, and visually the subtle depression in the seat, followed by the heater fan slowing. The visor cam, mounted discreetly above the windshield, offered a slightly different angle of the passenger side, confirming just the empty space, the sound, and the anomalous adjustments. I spent the next hour reviewing the footage, replaying the yes over and over. It was a low, masculine voice, calm, almost conversational. The layered cab echo, a subtle reverb I'd always attributed to the truck's acoustics, seemed to amplify it, making it sound like the cab itself had whispered. I checked every inch of the passenger side, running my hand over the seat. The frost was still there, cold and dry. No moisture, no condensation that would suggest a person had recently been there. I even opened the passenger door, letting a blast of frigid air into the cab, just to confirm no one was hiding. Nothing. The unease didn't dissipate. It settled in, a cold weight in my chest. I tried to dismiss it as a glitch, an electrical short, a trick of the mind in the dead of night, but the recorded evidence contradicted that. I started the engine again, the roar momentarily comforting. I tried to contact dispatch to report a possible electrical anomaly, but my voice caught. How do you explain a voice from an empty seat? I typed out a quick message about unusual cabin system behavior and sent it, knowing it sounded vague and unconvincing. My usual protocol for reporting equipment malfunctions felt entirely inadequate, and I found myself abandoning the idea of a full diagnostic report. What would I even tell the mechanic? As I drove on, the silence of the cab felt different, heavier. The occasional creak of the suspension, the whine of the turbo, sounds I'd lived with for years, now seemed amplified, almost watchful. I kept glancing at the passenger seat. The frost remained, stubbornly clinging to the fabric. Every now and then, I thought I heard faint whispers, just at the edge of hearing, like a radio tuned to a distant, barely audible station. I cranked up the heater again, but the passenger side felt distinctly colder, a chill that seemed to emanate from the seat itself, despite the warm air blasting from the vents. I remembered a summer trip as a kid, riding in the back of my dad's old station wagon, singing along to the radio with my sister, the windows down, the warm air rushing in. The simple joy of that memory felt a million miles away from the isolated dread I now felt. Then it happened again. The subtle sag in the seat, more pronounced this time, a deeper depression as if someone had truly settled in, and the heater fan, without my input, slowed once more, settling into that quieter, steadier hum. I looked at the visor cam footage in real time on the tablet. It showed nothing, just the empty seat, the frost. But the mic picked up another sound. Not a yes this time, but a faint, almost imperceptible sigh, followed by a series of soft, rhythmic clicks, like fingernails tapping lightly on a hard surface. The layered cab echo was undeniable now, the sounds resonating, bouncing off the interior panels, making it impossible to pinpoint their origin. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I couldn't drive anymore. My hands were shaking. I pulled over again, this time at a truck stop, bright lights cutting through the oppressive darkness. I killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening. The cab felt impossibly cold despite the heater having just run. I stared at the passenger seat, the frost still there, the faint impression still visible. I knew what the dash cam and mic had recorded. I knew what I had seen and heard. But there was nothing. No one. Just the empty seat, the silent cab, and the chilling certainty that I was not alone. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to explain, just waiting for the next sound. I've been an escort rigger for nearly 15 years, mostly working the heavy haul routes through the Pacific Northwest. My specialty is the oversized loads, the ones that push every limit, especially when it comes to river crossings. I'm level 3 certified for complex rigging, which means I'm the one calculating load dynamics, chain tensions, and swing vectors on systems that can put tens of thousands of pounds over open water. My gear is standard issue: reinforced hard hat, high-vis vest, comms headset, laser rangefinder, and a set of calibrated tension gauges that are as much a part of my hand as my fingers. I've seen everything from bridge collapses to cable snaps, but what happened on the Klickitat River last spring still keeps me awake. The job was a single, massive turbine housing, destined for a new hydroelectric plant upstream. It weighed in at 180,000 pounds. Our route included a temporary chain and pulley system spanning a 300-foot section of the Klickitat, a stretch known for its unpredictable currents and a series of shallow, fast-moving ripples. This wasn't a bridge. It was a suspended transfer. The load would hang from a custom-fabricated cradle, itself suspended by 4 main chains, each linked to an independent winch system on either bank. The entire operation was a slow, deliberate crawl. My position was the signal point on the east bank, giving me a clear sightline to the load, the chain lane, and the operator in the control booth. Our core protocol for suspended loads, especially over water, is non-negotiable. Maintain continuous controlled motion. A stopped load is a static load, and static loads invite resonance, fatigue, and catastrophic failure. Any sway, however minor, must be dampened but never eliminated by force. The system is designed to allow a natural, pendulum-like swing that dissipates kinetic energy. We log every tension reading, every inch of travel, every degree of tilt.
On that day, the air was cool, around 45 degrees Fahrenheit, with a light breeze from the north. The river was running high but clear, the surface broken by those distinctive ripples about halfway across. We started the transfer at 06:15. The sun was just clearing the eastern ridge, casting long shadows across the water. The turbine housing, encased in its steel cradle, cleared the river approach without issue. The winch operator was precise, pulling the load at a steady 0.5 feet per minute. I was watching the inclinometer readings on my handheld, confirming the load was level, and the tension gauges, ensuring even distribution across all 4 chains. Everything was by the book. The load began its slow traverse, a slight, rhythmic sway developing as it gained momentum, maybe a foot or so from its center axis, exactly as expected. I remember thinking about a simpler time, watching my younger cousin on a playground swing, the predictable arc, the gentle slowdown at the top of the curve. It was the same physics, just on a much grander scale. As the load reached the first of the major ripples, the water beneath it churned a little more violently. This was anticipated. The slight increase in water resistance usually caused a minor perturbation in the swing, a momentary dampening, then a return to its rhythm. I focused my gaze, ready to signal for a fractional speed adjustment if needed. I might have blinked, or perhaps my attention wavered for a fraction of a second, checking the comms channel for an update from the West Bank spotter. It was a minor lapse, a momentary break in my absolute focus. When I looked back, the load was directly over the ripple. It had been swinging, maybe 6 inches to the west. Then it just stopped. Not a gradual deceleration, but an instantaneous arrest. The massive turbine housing, all 180,000 pounds of it, froze mid-sway, as if held by an invisible hand.
The chains, which had been minutely shifting and groaning, clicked once. A single, sharp, metallic sound. Then went absolutely quiet. The load hung motionless, 6 inches off its center axis, perfectly still. The river continued to flow beneath it, the ripples breaking and reforming, but the load itself was utterly unmoving. "Operator, hold position," I radioed, my voice tighter than I intended. "Load is static. Confirm readings." "Copy, rigger. Holding. Tension gauges stable." "What's the issue?" the operator replied, his voice betraying a hint of confusion. My inclinometer showed the load still tilted those 6 inches to the west. My tension gauges showed the chains under full, balanced load, exactly as they should have been if the load was simply hanging. But it wasn't simply hanging. It was fixed. I zoomed my binoculars, checking for any snagged cables, any fouled pulleys, anything that could explain the impossible stillness. Nothing. The chains ran clear from the cradle to the anchor points. "Try a fractional forward movement," I instructed, abandoning the protocol to maintain continuous motion. The current situation was unprecedented. "Just a foot," the operator confirmed. I watched the load. The chains visibly tensed, a faint hum coming through my boots from the ground anchor. The winch motor whined. The load did not budge. Not an inch. Not a millimeter. It remained suspended, rigid. A colossal pendulum frozen at the apex of its swing. "Negative movement, rigger. Chains are taut, motors pulling, but the load isn't responding," the operator reported, his voice now edged with alarm. "It's like it's welded to the air." I tried reversing. The same result. The load was utterly immovable. The air around it, though the river breeze still carried the scent of damp earth and pine needles across I could see the water flowing, the ripples moving, but the volume of air directly surrounding the turbine housing seemed to exist in a different state, devoid of any kinetic energy. It was as if a perfectly defined, static air pocket had enveloped the load, holding it in place against the laws of physics. "West Bank, report visual," I called out. "Visual clear, rigger. No obstructions. Load is just hanging there. Perfectly still." "It's not supposed to be that still," the spotter replied, his voice thin with unease. We spent the next hour trying every minor adjustment, increasing tension, decreasing tension, attempting to induce a sway with minor, controlled pulses from the winches. Nothing worked. The turbine housing remained locked in its mid-sway position, a monument to an impossible physics anomaly. The air around it shimmered faintly in the rising sun, not from heat, but from some indescribable distortion. The river flowed, the wind blew, but that massive object held by its chains was simply still. The supervisor was called in. Engineers arrived.
They ran diagnostics on the winches, checked the integrity of the chains, deployed sonar to scan the riverbed beneath the load for any unseen anchor points. All systems reported normal. The chains were under tension. The winches were capable of pulling, but the load simply would not move. It was as if its inertia had been multiplied to infinity, or an invisible, perfectly rigid mold had formed around it. As the sun climbed higher, the situation became a standoff. A 180,000-pound turbine housing, suspended over a river, held by nothing discernible, defying every principle of mechanics and gravity we understood. We had no protocol for this. We had no tools for this. The only sound was the distant call of an osprey, and the relentless, mocking flow of the Klickitat beneath the impossible stillness. The load remains there now, a silent, unmoving sentinel, a testament to something that simply shouldn't be.
I've been the primary bridge watcher for this section of the North Fork for 15 years. My station is a small, insulated gauge hut perched just off the main span, right at the center chord of the old steel truss bridge. It's a quiet job, mostly, involving routine checks: structural flex, cable tension, river level, current speed, and a constant visual sweep of the deck and the water below. My tools are simple: a pair of Steiner binoculars, a two-way radio, the official logbook, and a handheld anemometer for wind speed. I've seen this river in flood and drought, watched ice flows grind against the pilings, and felt the whole structure hum with the passage of a heavy freight train. You get to know its rhythms, its moods. The core of my job, the unwritten rule I live by, is that the river never lies. Its surface, its currents, the way it interacts with the bridge, these are the most honest indicators of what's happening, both above and below the waterline. Any discrepancy between what the gauges say and what the river shows is a red flag, a signal to pay closer attention. It was late afternoon, the sun angling low and casting long shadows from the trusswork across the deck. A standard day, light traffic, the river running at a normal spring flow. I was making my hourly log entry, noting the air temperature at 62 degrees Fahrenheit and a southerly breeze at 7 knots. The metallic tang of the river air was sharp, a familiar smell I'd long associated with peace. As I looked up from the logbook, a semi-truck, a flatbed hauling lumber, rumbled onto the bridge. My eyes tracked it automatically, checking for excessive sway or unusual vibrations. That's when I saw it. A dark band, maybe 6 feet wide, stretched across the deck, directly beneath the truck's trailer. It wasn't a shadow cast by the truck itself. The angle of the sun and the diffuse light made that impossible. This band was a deeper, more profound shade, almost like a stain on the asphalt. It moved with the truck, but not quite. As the rear axle of the rig passed over it, the dark band seemed to rise behind the truck, like a wake under glass, then settled back onto the deck as the truck pulled away. It held its position for a moment. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, dissipated into the normal deck surface. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. Fatigue. I'd been on shift since dawn, and the monotonous drone of the river could play tricks on you. I remembered once as a kid, sitting on the bank of a smaller river watching ducks paddle, and thinking how simple everything was. This wasn't simple. It was an optical illusion, I told myself. A trick of light and perspective. I noted the time in my log, 16:17, and a brief dismissive comment. Visual anomaly, deck, likely refraction. But then another rig, a tanker, approached from the opposite direction. I watched intently. As its front tires hit the approximate spot where I'd seen the band before, it reappeared. This time it was clearer. A distinct dark smear on the concrete, moving with the vehicle, yet subtly independent. It wasn't reflecting light. It was absorbing it. And again, as the final axle cleared, the band seemed to lift, a momentary swell of darkness behind the rig, before sinking back into the deck and fading. The bridge itself had a low, constant hum, a vibration I barely registered anymore. But it felt different now, somehow colder. My initial dismissal gave way to a prickle of unease. This wasn't refraction. It was too consistent, too specific in its I lowered the binoculars, and the dark band was there again, forming ahead of a minivan. It was smaller this time, less pronounced, but undeniably present. It stretched across the entire width of the lane. I radioed dispatch. Bridge watcher to dispatch. I'm observing an unusual visual phenomenon on the deck. Appears to be a dark band, transient, associated with vehicle passage. No structural indicators. Requesting visual confirmation if any units are inbound. Copy that, Bridge Watcher. Dispatch replied, their voice crackling. No units inbound for the next 20 minutes. Keep us updated. I decided to get a different perspective. I left the gauge hut, locking the door behind me, and walked out onto the center court. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at my jacket. I stood directly over the area where the band appeared. The bridge felt solid underfoot, no unusual vibrations. I looked down at the river, 150 feet below. The water flowed smoothly, a deep green, no visible turbulence or anomalies. The current speed gauge in the hut had read 3.5 knots, perfectly normal for this time of year. There was nothing in the water that could explain a disturbance on the deck. I continued my walk, crossing to the downstream bank. From this angle, I could see a wider sweep of the bridge deck and the river. The sun was lower now, painting the underside of the clouds in oranges and purples. A pickup truck crossed the bridge, and there it was again. The dark band, spanning the width of the lane, following the truck, then rising like a dark, liquid shadow before settling. It was too distinct to be an illusion. It was a physical manifestation. But of what?
I pulled out my phone, intending to record it. My reporting protocol for structural anomalies required photographic or video evidence if possible. I aimed the camera at the deck, waiting for the next vehicle. A sedan approached. The band appeared. I pressed record.
When I played the footage back, the deck looked perfectly normal. There was no dark band, no rising shadow, just a car driving over an ordinary bridge. I tried again with a larger truck, focusing on the specific spot. The same result. The camera simply refused to register it. It was as if the phenomenon existed only for direct human observation. Frustration simmered. My protocol for documentation was failing. I couldn't provide evidence. I couldn't even describe it adequately without sounding like I was seeing things. I logged the failed attempts, noting the time, 17:48, and the lack of photographic corroboration. Over the next hour, the dark band became a permanent fixture on the deck. It no longer waited for a vehicle to appear. It was just there. A constant 6-foot-wide strip of deeper shadow spanning both lanes, directly over the deepest part of the channel. It didn't move with the wind, didn't shift with the changing light. It was fixed. When a car passed over it, the shadow still reacted, rising behind the vehicle. A dark, impossible wake on solid concrete. It was no longer transient. It was a sunken shadow, permanently embossed on the span. I radioed dispatch again, trying to keep my voice steady. Bridge watcher to dispatch. The visual anomaly has become constant. It's a dark band across the deck, spanning both lanes, roughly 6 feet wide. It reacts to traffic in a way that suggests a physical disturbance, but there's no visible cause. My attempts to document it visually have failed. There was a pause. Bridge watcher, can you confirm no structural issues, no vibrations, no cracks, no unusual sounds? Confirmed. All gauges read normal. No unusual sounds or vibrations from the structure itself. It's purely a visual phenomenon, but it's consistent and persistent. Understood, Bridge Watcher. We'll log it as an unconfirmed visual anomaly. Advise if anything else develops. We'll have a supervisor review the logs. They thought I was tired or seeing things, but I wasn't. The dark band was still there, stretching across the concrete, a liquid stain that defied physics. The river below remained placid, its surface reflecting the last vestiges of the sunset, utterly indifferent. But the bridge itself, the span I had watched for so long, now carried a secret, a dark current that had somehow risen from the depths and imprinted itself upon the deck, waiting for the next.
I've been running heavy iron for the state for 22 years. Most of that time I've been up here on the mountain passes, clearing snow. It's a good job, honest work. You learn the roads, you learn the weather, you learn the quirks of the equipment. Highway 177, specifically the stretch between the old timber mill and the summit. That's my beat. It's mostly remote, a lot of tight turns, and a few turnouts where folks can chain up or pull over if the weather gets too rough. My rig is a 12-ton diesel plow truck, a wing plow on the side, and a sander in the bed.
Standard issue. I know every inch of that road, every dip, every potential drift. This particular morning started like any other pre-dawn shift in late January. The temperature gauge in the cab read 18 degrees Fahrenheit, clear skies, no wind. Perfect conditions for fresh powder. We'd gotten about 4 inches overnight, just enough to be slick, not enough to be a full-blown blizzard. My shift started at 0300. Pre-trip inspection, logbook entries, a quick radio check with dispatch. Unit 1, clear to roll. My primary directive on a powder day is to make the first pass, clearing the main line and checking all designated turnouts. Protocol dictates that every turnout must be visually inspected for stranded vehicles, unusual activity, or any potential hazards. A vehicle in a turnout, especially overnight, is a potential emergency. Footprints, if present, always tell a story, leading to a vehicle, away from it, or along the road. They have a logical flow. That's the rule. That's what I've always known. I hit the road, the big diesel rumbling, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. The wing plow hissed softly as it cut into the fresh snow on the shoulder. The first 3 turnouts were clean, just smooth, undisturbed white. The 4th turnout, about 7 miles up from the base, is a wide spot, nestled against a stand of firs, with a steep berm on the far side that catches drifts. It's a popular spot.
As I approached turnout number 4, my lights swept across the fresh powder. No vehicle tracks leading in or out. That was the first thing I registered. Good. No one stuck. But then, as the plow's powerful beams settled, I saw them. Footprints. Distinct. Size 10 or 11. Deep impressions from heavy-soled boots. They started roughly 10 feet in from the edge of the asphalt where the fresh snow began, and led in a straight line towards the berm, then directly into the deep drift that had accumulated there. I slowed the truck, my brain trying to process the visual against the protocol. Prints. Okay. But where did they come from? And where did they go? I eased the plow to a stop, engaged the parking brake, and killed the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal and the distant rush of a creek. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and stepped out. The cold bit immediately, sharp and clean. I walked toward the prints, my own boots crunching loudly in the fresh snow. The air smelled crisp, like frozen pine needles. The prints were perfectly clear, each lug mark distinct. They were not haphazard. They were a deliberate stride. I followed them. 10 feet from the asphalt, across the undisturbed snow of the turnout, right up to the edge of the drift. The drift was about 6 feet deep against the berm, wind packed on top, but soft powder underneath. The prints stopped abruptly at the lip of the drift. And here was the problem. They all faced inward. All of them. As if someone had simply walked into the snowbank. I circled the area, my flashlight beam sweeping wide. No prints leading away. None. No tracks coming from the road. No vehicle tracks anywhere near the turnout. It was impossible. A person doesn't just materialize in the middle of a...
I glanced at my fuel gauge, thinking about the next fueling stop. A small distraction. Maybe it was just a strange optical illusion, a partial track from a snowshoe, though the definition was too clear for that. But the more I looked, the more the anomaly solidified. This wasn't a trick of light. This was a violation of every logical principle I knew. I pulled out my radio. Dispatch Unit 1. I'm at turnout number 4 on 177. I've got an unusual situation. Footprints in fresh snow, no vehicle, no entry or exit tracks. Request you check for any missing persons reports in the area or any stranded vehicle calls for this section. Copy that, Unit 1. Stand by for check. Dispatch's voice was calm, professional. While I waited, I walked a wider perimeter, expanding my search. The snow was pristine, a perfect canvas, not a single other mark. I bent down, examining the final print at the drift edge. It was deep, almost like the person had stepped with considerable weight. And then, right where the final print ended, I saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible indentation in the snow, just beyond the last boot mark. It wasn't a body outline, nothing so dramatic. It was a slight rectangular depression, maybe 1.5 feet by 2 feet, almost like something heavy and flat had briefly rested there, pressing down the snow, then been lifted straight up. A pressure door slip, I thought, like the impression a heavy hatch might make if it settled in the snow for a moment. I initially dismissed it as a random compression, but now, with the impossible prints, it clicked into place as another piece of the unsettling puzzle. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence that presses in on you, that feels too heavy for the air. It reminded me of a Christmas morning as a kid, waking up to fresh snow and seeing my dad's boot prints leading to the woods, where he'd gone to cut a small tree. Those prints always had a clear purpose, a beginning and an end.
The memory, so mundane and comforting, felt jarring against the stark, inexplicable reality before me. Dispatch came back on. Unit 1, no missing persons reported in your sector. No stranded vehicles. Anything else to report? I hesitated. The standard protocol for an unexplained anomaly was to secure the scene and wait for a patrol unit. But the prints were already exposed. The sun would be up in an hour. My own tracks were already compromising the immediate area, and leaving the plow here, blocking the road, was a hazard in itself. The protocol, in this specific, impossible situation, felt like it was failing. I had to make a judgment call. Negative, dispatch. Just a strange set of prints. I've documented them with my phone camera and logbook. I'll continue my plow line and keep the turnout under observation. I didn't know what else to say. The facts were there, but the explanation wasn't. I got back into the cab. The diesel engine rumbled to life, and the heater began to blow its comforting, dry warmth. I caught the faint, familiar smell of pine sap mixed with the exhaust, a scent that usually meant another successful shift, but now just felt like an irrelevant detail in a deeply unsettling scene. I looked back at the turnout. The prints were still there, stark against the white. As I engaged the wing plow, preparing to clear the turnout, I found myself hesitating. It felt wrong to plow over them, to erase the impossible evidence. Instead, I carefully maneuvered the plow, clearing around the prints,
leaving a small, untouched island of snow with the boot marks still perfectly preserved. It was a deviation from standard procedure, but I couldn't bring myself to wipe them away. I continued down the road, the plow blade grinding against the asphalt. But the image of those inward-facing prints, leading nowhere, kept replaying in my mind. Who walked into the snow and simply vanished? And how? The morning sun eventually broke over the peaks, casting long blue shadows across the freshly plowed road. My shift as a safety auditor for the Regional Transport Authority usually involves the hum of server racks and the quiet click of a mouse. For 15 years, I've been staring at high-resolution monitors, sifting through hours of live feeds and archived footage from thousands of milepost cameras strung across 3 states. My job is to spot the anomalies, the unsecured load, the erratic driver, the missing tail light, the subtle signs of impending infrastructure failure. I'm certified in accident reconstruction and forensic video analysis, which mostly means I know how to navigate our proprietary traffic management software better than anyone. And I can tell a real hazard from a compression artifact. It was late, past 0200 hours, and the office was quiet, save for the distant thrum of the HVAC and the occasional chirp from the dispatch console. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. I was reviewing a flagged incident on the I-80 corridor, a known hotspot for heavy truck traffic, specifically near milepost 217, where the highway crosses the Blackwood River on a long, elevated bridge. The system had flagged a flatbed rig for exceeding the posted speed limit by a few miles per hour. Standard procedure dictates I review the 30 seconds preceding and following the flag, checking for other violations, proper lighting, load securement, driver behavior. The rig came into view, a heavy haul flatbed carrying what looked like structural steel girders. As it approached MP 217, I zoomed in. On the cab roof, an amber safety beacon was clearly visible. It was bright, almost painfully so on the feed, a perfect sphere of concentrated light. My core protocol for beacons is simple. It needs to throw light. It needs to illuminate the immediate surroundings, making the vehicle more visible, splashing its color onto the road, the load, the guardrails. This is critical for other drivers, especially in low visibility. But this beacon threw no light. I watched, puzzled. The rig's headlights cut a clean path on the asphalt. The bridge rail, a concrete barrier topped with a steel guard, remained dark, reflecting only the ambient moonlight. The median pole, holding the MP 217 sign, was a silhouette. There was no amber wash, no spill, no glow on anything adjacent to the rig itself. The beacon was a contained, self-luminous orb floating above the cab, utterly disconnected from the physical world around it. It was like a bright star painted onto the feed, not a physical light source. I rewound the footage, played it again. Same thing. The beacon was a pristine, vivid dot of light, but it cast no illumination. I checked the timestamp. 2:14:38. I made a mental note, my brow furrowing. I briefly glanced at my wrist, noting the time and thinking about how I still had 2 hours left on my shift. A small momentary lapse in focus.
I decided to pull up the previous segment, thinking it might be a camera artifact specific to that exact frame, a momentary glitch. I navigated back 10 minutes in the timeline, searching for the rig's approach. To my surprise, the same flatbed rig, same load of steel, and the same phantom beacon appeared in the feed. It was approaching MP-217 again. My fingers paused on the mouse. This was impossible. A rig moving at 65 miles per hour would have covered several miles in 10 minutes, certainly not reappeared at the same point. Then I looked at the timestamp. It was also 2:14:38. My heart rate jumped. I replayed both segments, toggling between them. The rig was clearly moving forward in both instances. The background, the bridge, the median pole, all matched. But the time tags, displayed clearly on the bottom of the feed, remained static. 2:14:38. For two distinct visual events, separated by what felt like a full 10 minutes of review time, the system insisted it was the exact same second, all showing correct real-world time. I tried to find the rig before this 10-minute window, but the footage became fragmented, jumping, or simply didn't show the rig. It was as if it materialized at 2:17, passed, then rematerialized 10 minutes later at the same point with the same timestamp, and passed again. I picked up the phone. "Dispatch, this is Auditor Unit 7. I need Unit 42 to check milepost 217, bridge structure. Any disabled vehicles, any debris, any unusual activity. Priority. Protocol demands physical verification for such anomalies. I also requested a review of the camera's maintenance logs for that specific unit. While waiting for Unit 42, I tried to trace the rig forward from the second pass. The system showed it passing MP-218, then MP-219, with time tags progressing normally. But when I tried to trace it backwards from MP-217, the feeds became corrupted, pixelating into static, or simply didn't show the rig at all. It was like a hole in the data, a void where the rig should have been. The air in the office suddenly felt heavy, cloying. I could smell the stale coffee in my mug, a bitter, metallic scent. Unit 42 reported back a few minutes later, their voice crackling through the console speaker. "Negative, Auditor. MP-217 clear. Bridge rail intact. Median pole secure. No signs of recent incident or vehicle activity. Nothing out of the ordinary." My supervisor, alerted by dispatch about the unusual request, walked over to my station. "What's up, Auditor 7? I showed them the footage. The bright beacon, the impossible lack of light throw, the two distinct passes of the same rig, both tagged with the identical, unmoving timestamp. My supervisor leaned in, their face illuminated by the monitor's glow. "It's a camera gain ghost," they suggested after a long moment. The sensor overcompensated for a bright point, creating that perfect orb. But it's not actually there.
It's a common artifact with high contrast light sources against dark backgrounds. But the time tags, that's new. I've never seen that. We reviewed the camera's internal diagnostics. Everything green, no errors. No known vulnerabilities for that camera model or the software. The system was robust, designed for redundancy and precision. We tried to export the footage for forensic analysis, but the segment with the double pass and static timestamp consistently corrupted upon export. It played fine on the live system, a perfect, impossible loop, but it refused to save correctly. The data appeared to resist capture, to fight back. We filed a report detailing a system anomaly, unresolvable. The rig itself was never identified beyond its general description. Its unique identifier, the license plate, was obscured by the phantom beacon's brightness. The incident was officially closed as an unexplained data corruption. I remember watching fireflies as a kid, their cold, living light blinking in the twilight of a summer evening. This beacon was the opposite, bright, artificial, and utterly dead. The footage remains in the system, a bright, unthrowing light, a rig passing twice at the same exact second. I still occasionally check MP217 on late shifts, half expecting to see that bright, silent beacon, passing twice, forever. The thought of what that really was, if it wasn't just a camera glitch, still makes the fluorescent hum of the office feel like a low growl.